What is up? Those are exciting times because we are going to explore saturation for a couple of tutorials. So buckle up and enjoy the ride. What is saturation? Well, to understand that and understand also a couple of other concepts in electronic music, you got to remember that it came from hardware and came from analog gears. And a lot of stuff in digital audio workstation, a lot of plugins, they want to either emulate that or literally like reproduce what the hardware and the analog gear was doing. Also, saturation is a kind of distortion because you will see all the plugins, all the saturation plugins we're going to view. If you push them to a certain level, there's going to be distortion. I would say like saturation is some soft distortion. And when I say it comes from hardware, well, there's two main saturation algorithms or main saturation trends. There's the tape saturation and there's the tube saturation. Tape saturation will tend to emulate the behavior of the signal passing through a tape machine. And same goes for tube saturation plugins that will try to recreate the behavior of the signal passing through a tube device. There's definitely more than that, but we'll start with these two, which are the most basic and important ones. Also to understand saturation properly. And after that, we can venture into some crazy saturation landscape together. Depending on which moment you view this video, this might be a spoiler alert or just a alert because I'm working on a synth wave preset pack for Serum for Ghost Hack, and this is actually like a snap of the project. It's really early snap because what I do is just to get in the groove, just to get in the zone of synthwave. I do like just a small project loop, and this is how I create the preset. And this is a very drafty snap of it, and we're gonna this is just the sounds. All right, there's just the sound. There's no processing at all, and that's what we're going to put. We're gonna put saturation. And we're going to see how with saturation we can really choose the project and get it of that drafty zone and give it a bit of honor. Yeah, make it sound good. All right, and because you see that I have a very cheapy kick. I have a super simple snare, and I have one harp and one bass, which there's only kickstart on it just to make it bump, and that's it. Like 4 channels. And this is how it sounds. Yeah, we're just like that. We're back in the 80s. So starting with the kick, this is the kick. But first, let's load Tube Amp. If you have used this plugin in the parallel processing tutorials, and I've promised that I would talk more extensively about this guy, and here it is. Like I was telling you, Tube Amp is based on the tube algorithm or tube behavior, and it's great. It's by Voxengo. It's available for free, and this is how it works. You have the dry knob, you have a output knob. So you ideally in your plugin chain, you want to have your signal entering at a certain force, and you want it exiting the plugin at a similar level. So you're gonna trim a bit of the signal at the end, but we're gonna see that. The bias knob is going to affect how the saturation is behaving. It's kind of altering better parameters. And once you have your drive set up, maybe you can, we're gonna try with the bias and maybe get something even better out of it, or maybe it won't. You have 2 different modes. I tend to stick with mode 2 because it's the best. Let's give it a bit of juice. And what I want to show you is to each plugin, let's say you load this plugin for the first time, each saturation plugin, what you want to do is just crank it up to the point where it distorts, and this will help you understand how the plugin is acting, how it's behaving. And after that, you kind of want that middle point between crushing the signal in distortion and that point where there's nothing happening. All right, you need to find that like sweet spot. So let's go. Now this is distorting. Let's dial it back to that sweet spot. You hear it, it's starting to, it's getting bolder and it's starting to boil a bit, but it's cool. Let's try with the bias. I don't hear much difference. I kind of feel it's the high frequencies are a bit more active when the bias is full on. I'm gonna leave it like that. Let's just make sure we trim the signal if we need to. And I'm gonna parallel process it a bit. If you want to know more about that, go check out the parallel processing tutorial. Let's bypass the tube amp and see what it does. Great, 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 great. And I have another, this is good, but we can go more. You can go, this is Tube Saturator Vintage by Waves Art. Just, it's not the same company as Waves plugin, but it's Waves Art. This is called Tube Saturator Vintage. It's a freeware too. Very cool plugin. Again, tends to emulate the tube behavior, but it's not the same algorithm, so it's okay to use two of them. It would not necessarily be wise to, let's say, just slap back another tube amp in there, because you're just putting the same algorithm back to back, but this is not the same. Also, your here is going to tell you if it's, just trust your here. But yeah, you have this one, you have the drive knob, and you have an EQ, which we're not going to use, and you can slap in that fat switch here, but it's intense, and I don't want that. But again, let's start with 0 and get it all the way to get the drive all the way. It's good. Let's hear the kick and bypass the two plugin we have on it. Yeah, there's a bit more character. It started as a boring kick, and now it's a little bit better. Let's go to the snare now. Super simple. It doesn't sound so much great, but I wanted to have the feeling of like the old school snare that you can hear in the synthwave. So it does the job for the moment. Let's hear with the tube amp. Already good. I'm gonna try, just for the sake of it, the Tube Saturator Vintage, but I feel like there's enough tube on that snare. And I was wrong. Well, you hear we get much more punch out of it. I'm gonna try the trim the output here. And let's bypass the two plugins on the snare. We have used the tube plugins on the drums. Now let's go on the synths and do the same. There's a harp here. The idea with this plugin and with that sound that I hear would be to give it more body and try to stay away from the really distorting aspect of it. I don't want it to fizzle and add like real distortion. I just want that saturation zone. Like at 19 it starts to fizzle, so maybe 12. Tube saturator vintage now. Let's bypass two plugins on the harp. I would say it's less noticeable than what it does to the drums, but it definitely adds a bit of body and power to the sound, still being subtle. What it would really need is a bit of tape saturation. So later we're gonna come back at this guy and give it some tape. Let's do the bass now. And just by hearing that sound, I'm sure it's gonna do some nice things on the bass. Gonna bypass two plugins on the bass. We can definitely hear it better on the bass as it really thickens up the body. All that grit that was already in the bass, the tube algorithms just push it and make it really even more gritty. Let's compare the dry version with the final version. It's far from being subtle in my opinion. Now the drums are much thicker, they have more power, the bass has more presence, and it just lifts the whole mix. So that was two tube saturation plugins you can start using right now because again, they are freeware. You can start adding that to your workflow. Those are perfect plugins to start dipping into saturation and get your ear used to it. That was it for tube saturation, but there is more plugins and more techniques coming your way. Make sure you subscribe for more content by myself or other Ghost Act producers. And until then, I wish you happy saturation and I will see you in another video.